Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next, the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I am talking with Yowie, or to be specific, I'm talking with two-thirds of Yowie, drummer Shawn Defenestrator and guitarist Daniel the Quidnunk. And to describe the music of Yowie, Yowie has been described as protest music. I think the band has even been described as anti-music. I believe, if I remember correctly, I characterized the band within this interview as, or the experience of listening to this band as being like the world turning to Play-Doh and then getting sucked into a vortex and pulled through a meat grinder, which doesn't really explain what the music is all about. They are a trio of drums and guitars. They play with rhythms, they play with time signatures, they play with tempo. They do all kinds of crazy things that you wouldn't necessarily think feasible between drums and guitars. And they don't sound like anyone else. None of their records really sound alike from one to the next. They are an entirely unique band. And what better home for an entirely unique avant-garde rock band than the great SKiN GRAFT Records, which is where they find a home. And indeed, on this very day, the band releases their latest album, Taking Umbrage, which you can get from Bandcamp, you can get from SKiN GRAFT Records. I will put links in the description. The album features quite beautiful artwork from Arnulf Roedler. And we talk about that as well as talking about the music, how they construct it, talking about where the band is actually based. And yeah, that is what is to be found within this interview. So if you are watching this on YouTube, you will notice that once again my background has changed. I am no longer in Thailand, as I was for the last episode or two. I am now in Oxford visiting my mum. You will also notice, perhaps if you're watching this on YouTube, that I have an interesting facial disfigurement going on. I brought back a nice little gift from training Muay Thai in Thailand. One other incidental thing to say, which I'm going to regret saying publicly, I suppose, but this beard that you see before you, I have decided that this beard remains until I have a Muay Thai fight. So if you see me without a beard from this point on, it means one of two things. It means either I had a Muay Thai fight or I chickened out. So, but that is beside the point as far as this episode goes. We are here to celebrate Yowie. You can follow the band on Facebook and Instagram. They are going to be on tour in Europe in the coming weeks. They are in fact going to be playing the Strong Room Bar in London on the 24th of October. And I will be there with my melted face. And for all other dates, you can check out the band's social media. You can check out SKiN GRAFT Records for all of that. If you would like to support the podcast, you can now do so on Patreon, patreon.com/whatevercomesnext, where I will be uploading full-length episodes, starting from the previous 100th episode, the DIY special. I have got the full-length Steve Austin of Today's the Day interview up there, and I will be putting more up shortly. There will be an extended version of this Yowie interview that will be going up there as well for a mere £5 per month is all I ask. You will get the full-length episodes. You will get to know in advance future episodes. You will even get to pitch questions to future guests if you should so desire. You can follow me on all social media at Tom Osman Sounds. You can go to my website, tomosmansounds.com, to see what's going on with me musically. I am going to be putting my music on Ampwall. You should also go check out Ampwall, irrespective of me and whether I am there or not. But I will be there soon. But I'm just not there yet. I will be playing a track from Taking Umbrage at the end of this interview with a short clip coming up right now. And with that, there is nothing left to say, but Shawn and Daniel of Yowie, take it away. one thing I wanted to clear up, which I guess I can do between the two of you, I'm very confused about where Yowie is because and obviously, like, Daniel, you haven't been in the band for so long. But am I right in thinking that you're in Australia? Is that correct?
That's Jack. He couldn't make it because it's
Okay.
3 o'clock in the morning where he is. I'm in Philadelphia.
You're in Philadelphia. Okay. And so, because, for example, on Discogs, it says that Yowie was originally a St. Louis band. On Bandcamp, it says Antarctica. So, Shawn, where are you?
St. Louis.
Okay, you are. Oh, and it's St. Louis. Okay. So, what was the Antarctica connection?
Actual truth is, for all of a sudden on Bandcamp, we started getting all of these requests like, hey, we're a shoegaze band from Oregon, and we would like to play with your band. Will you please set us up with a show or whatever? Because apparently there's some kind of Bandcamp function where you can search around for different cities or whatever. And I just got tired of answering those questions over and over and over again because the answer was always no. So I just switched it to Antarctica, and no one likes our band now from Oregon and stuff. So that's much better.
I love it because I kept thinking to myself, I was like, how can they actually be in Antarctica? And I thought you must be some kind of research scientist that you're working at in the Antarctica.
Have you ever seen The Thing? Basically, our band is just the plot of The Thing. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a,
And
there's
I'm
a,
I'm the Wilford Brimley character.
so flamethrowers are involved.
Exactly.
I'm the cat.
What was that, Daniel?
Said I'm the cat who may or may not be the thing.
Ah, well, it's good to have some mystery there. So, on the topic of the forthcoming album, Taking Umbrage, I was thinking, and it's a great record. I love listening to it. It's very enjoyable. It's kind of mind melting. And I was thinking to myself, and I'm sure people have struggled with this over the years with Yowie in general. It's quite hard to think how to describe your music and what it sounds like. So rather than trying to say like, oh, it's this genre or that genre, by the time the last time I was listening to the record and I got to the end of it, I thought, you know what this makes me think of? And this probably isn't going to help people that haven't heard the music. I was thinking it's like the world has turned into Play-Doh and it's swirling in a whirlpool that's being fed through a meat grinder. That's what I've decided that Taking Umbrage sounds like.
Awesome. Yeah.
That is the genre. We're going to create that for Discogs, and that exact quote will be the new genre label. Absolutely.
Nice. So I think there was I forget now if it was actually in the quotes that you gave for the Ghost Cult piece last month, or if it was in a different interview that I saw. But you talked, Shawn, I guess this was you, about the process of making Yowie music. And I think you mentioned at a certain point, I forget if it was about the way it is now, the way it was. You said something about it being an esoteric process. So maybe you can tell me a bit, between the two of you, how it is that you construct this music. What is this process like?
Yeah, so I will say I have had to adapt it due to the long distance, the logistics that go along with recording music long distance. But I think the essence of it is often very much the same, which is that it is at least the parts that I write are purely rhythmic concepts in the truest form. So a lot of people hear that and they're like, that doesn't sound really all that interesting. But I think they maybe don't fully grasp how pure of a topic it is. Like literally, it is accents and rests. Um, so pure rhythm, no thought about any tonality whatsoever. And what I do is I try to I just monkey around with like different rhythmic concepts and find a series of beats, a series of accents and rests until I find something that all by itself, just the rhythm is intriguing. There's something that catches my imagination about it as it being not like a very standard or intuitive rhythm oftentimes. There's something that kind of grabs me about it. And then we start elaborating on that rhythm of what is it that is interesting or unique about this set of rests and accents. And then how can we sort of highlight or showcase different relationships within them? So a lot of times the choosing of what note is this? Is this an F? Is this a whatever? Is a lot of times down the like honestly irrelevant for quite a while to me personally. So that's a unusual way to write, I guess.
And so, from your point of view, Daniel, what is this process like? Because you've worked with some very interesting people before. So, like, how does this way of making music compare to like working with John Zorn, for example?
Oh, it's great. Working with John Zorn was through my band Cleric, and that was, pretty hands off. So he's kind of a taskmaster to everyone but Cleric, and he let us do whatever we wanted. So that was a kind of we that was an easy process. This was also an easy process. It just took a lot of time, and I think um, it's when you think about it, it's the way to do it is that we wrote a bunch of riffs. This is how I remember it. It was, initially like a drum beat always, I think. There might have been some times when I just submitted stuff, to see. And it's great because we would send each other files, and then within a few days, the other person would just add their instrument to it and give maybe two or three different options for each thing. So it quickly, filling up a Google Drive of parts that we didn't have any idea where they would go or if they would be included at all. And then, yeah, just over time, picking our favorite ones and then sort of, oh, let's try to write more variations of this. And then what's really fun is when Shawn submits something to me, I put something over top of it, give it back to him, and then he erases the drums. And you end up with yet another thing. And then once Jack joined in the mix, then there's just a lot of possibilities. So you accumulate parts and then pick your favorite ones and then figure out where they're all going to go. And it's true that the pitch, on a lot of those demos, I cheated, to make the pitch whatever I wanted to be, and maybe didn't even have my tuning figured out yet how it was going to be. So a lot of that stuff did change. And I think when I listen to old Yowie, I think this is probably true too, that a percentage of it is important to the pitch be accurate, and maybe more than 50%, it's more loose. It can be a contour of a melody. And Shawn, you mentioned the note F.
Is that a note?
It's a note, but not in this band, really. I don't think either Jack or myself really think about uh, traditional pitch much at all. You know,
And you
there.
use the term old Yowie, and I just want to say that's offensive. We prefer the term classic Yowie. Yeah.
And I think I saw actually, I forget if it was with you, Daniel, or if it was with Jack. One of you had various experience playing in, and now I've forgotten what the term is, basically between the notes, microtones, is that it?
Microtonal. That's Jack, and there's some accidental microtonalism on my part.
Okay.
I think with Jack, his other music is more deliberate with the microtonal stuff. In Yowie, I think he tunes to a traditional A440, but we're both like bending and sliding all over the place, and I imagine on this tour we might not even be tuning between every song.
And are you always playing with one guitar, or you have different guitars for different
Just
tracks?
one guitar each.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in terms of you and Jack coming in, and obviously you've the three of you now have written music together, but there is the classic Yowie material. So did you come in and learn previous Yowie tracks, which now you're performing live?
I did. I think there's maybe a year of just um, kind of concentrating on the older stuff for me, and while we started to write things, and then Shawn came to Philadelphia a little bit early on, and we were able to play in person and figure out a plan for writing. But in the beginning, yeah, I learned a bunch of songs that one of which will be played on tour, this tour, and other ones that, yeah, might make an appearance on future tours. Definitely don't want to let that stuff go
And
because
had
it's, yeah, great stuff.
yeah, had that stuff been transcribed, or you had to figure that out, or Sean gave you pointers?
Shawn did give me pointers, and there was various videos and stuff available. But to me, it's easier to just use my ears, and I do write it down. And I basically have like I decided that I would use tab in pencil so that I could change it often, and then the rhythm I would write above in like kind of slash notation. Um, and that way that would be more set in stone. And so that's how I transcribed most of the stuff. With my other, my guitar is not the same tuning you know, as the old lineup that Jeremiah used. So I had to pick a tuning that wasn't normal because it
Yeah.
wouldn't fit, but that also I could kind of still use my ear to figure out where stuff was so I could work fast.
And is that something that you wish to remain mysterious about, or can you say what your tuning is?
No, I would love to talk about that stuff. I think this is the one band where it's actually interesting. The gear, I have my guitar right back here, so we'll get that here. A little practice zone. So this is the new bass.
Ah, okay. That explains where the bass comes in.
Yep, this is used on the album and flat wound strings. And it's shielded with metallic paint in there, so it's very quiet, and the flat wound strings are very quiet. It's darker tone. I think darker tone than Jeremiah's tone was a bit more gnarly and biting. And the tuning is G. So really, I'll tell you the philosophy and then I'll tell you the notes. It's the whole thing down a whole step, then the seventh string, an additional whole step, so it's like dropped A tuning. Then the middle string, string four, is down an additional octave, which is inspired by my friend and hero Colin Marston playing war guitar with the center string being a, a thicker string, which is kind of interesting and forces you to kind of split the guitar in half in your mind. And so that would be we have G, D, G, and then C, low C, and then F, A, D. That's what we got.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's see, because I know about it's funny, Colin Marston keeps coming up more and more often with different people that I talk to. I've never actually spoke to him directly. And I know that he does have these very interesting guitars, but I'm pretty ignorant about exactly what is going on with them. So
Well, what's different with his, because his guitar has the thick string in the middle because it's basically an upside down fingerboard from there. So whereas his goes, high, lower, lower, lowest, higher, 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 in sequence. Mine doesn't do that. It's just the one string is awkwardly an additional octave down.
okay.
So in other words, things like a C chord are
We can't hear
playable.
it.
Can't really hear it, but you could play like open-faced chords and just one of the notes will be an octave down.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. I like that because, like, for me, and I'm not in any way a particularly good guitarist. Like, I can play and I have like kind of my own style, I guess I've developed. But like one of the first bands that I really got into was Sonic Youth. So I
Mm.
think that always kind of embedded in me the sense of curiosity when it comes to tunings and doing things that just somehow sound kind of tonally interesting. So I'm always sort of curious about people that have unusual tunings and the sort of possibilities that that creates. And so, Shawn, for you, I know that over the years, Yowie has had a few different lineups, but I think up until the latest lineup, Jeremiah had been with you from the beginning. Was that right?
That's right. He and I really started the band back in about 2000. Yep.
So, in terms of you playing with him and then with the different iterations of the band that you've had, like how much have the different players influenced the sound of Yowie and perhaps even what you're playing?
Pretty tremendously, I would say. So really, it was the original lineup for the first two albums. Then we had the last lineup was just the addition of Chris Troll, who, by the way, played that album with a Sonic Youth tuning,
Ah,
specifically. Yep. But still me and Jeremiah. And so this one, it was like palpably different, just not having the other founding member in the band. of us having to kind of always explore the question of like, is this Yowie? Like, is this a Yowie thing to do? And like, I didn't really have often think about it that much before. It would just be like, I don't like it, or I do like it, or and same thing from him. And this we had to like try to answer for ourselves like questions about like what are the contours of the band as a concept, and at what point like we don't want to stay in the same vein and like make a some kind of a reproduction of a previous album, but we also don't want to completely not sound like Yowie and have any continuity anymore. So like, what is the essence of the concept, and what is kind of in and off the menu? So that was like a constant negotiation in my mind of like this, does this capture the spirit of it, and me like kind of constantly discovering like there is a spirit of it, and I know it when I hear it, but like now I'm being forced to like actually kind of spell it out in my mind a little more, which was an interesting process for me for music I've been making for a long time. I had to figure out what I already knew it was and then tell it back to myself.
Yeah. And I was also thinking to myself, like, again, listening to the latest album and then going back and listening to like your first album. How should I pronounce this, by the way? Cryptoology?
Cryptozoology.
Cryptozoology. That makes sense.
So oology is the study of eggs, and cryptozoology is the study of hidden eggs, of eggs that are obscure, perhaps relating to cryptids.
Aha.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was thinking to myself, like comparing the two records together, cryptozoology to me is more kind of like rhythmically abrasive. There are more sort of like rhythmic explosions. Whereas I feel like Taking Umbrage in its way, it's like if you're receptive towards this very, like I say, kind of mind melting music, it's actually quite funky and it's got like a kind of a, like even though you might get lost as to where one is, you can kind of like bop along to it. So I'm wondering, has that been something that was sort of a conscious move or that just happened organically?
It was so like when we, and certainly the first album was quite intentionally sort of like assaulting in a lot of ways, right? And then the second one, we decided like, could we allow ourselves to groove or something like that a bit more? But in order to do so, we needed it to still have some kind of odd quality to it. Like you could still kind of move your head to it, but it had to like have something that was unique or interesting or different than what you would usually associate with groove. And then we pushed that to the furthest extreme I think the band will ever go with synchromysticism, where we like really insisted on, you know, keeping like generally speaking like a pulse, and relatively few um, major like kind of breakneck transitions or jump cut transitions. However, like that was part of the interesting thing of that album was like at times like finding how can we really change this up and make and like kind of cleverly have it go from one part to another without like losing that sense of momentum. I think with this album, we just allowed ourselves to not have there to be like a strict kind of rule set about that. I think the band had previously kind of gone from completely raucous to like, can we smooth this out and still make it yaoi, to now being like, all right, we're done with that line of experimentation, and now let's liberate ourselves and just see what we can do. At least that was my approach to it. How about you, Daniel?
Well, I think first, as a fan, the three albums are very different, the first three albums, because the first one, like knowing what I know now, I feel like there's a lot of thinking about what you might say like compound counting or something like that. It's not a divided, normally in music there's a measure, right? And you might divide it into four, but this was like something that Cleric did also quite a bit, which is more like adding numbers together, And if you look at the charts and sort of notes for some of the T songs on the first album, they are constructed like that. So you don't end up with a tempo per se all the time. Some of the parts are just like, oh, this one's a little slower. And you naturally just kind of feel those things and I don't know if it's able to be written really accurately on a uh in sheet music that way. I have sort of an approximation on my chart. So then going to Damning with Faint Praise, I feel like it did start it started getting a little funkier there. And I think of maybe the first and last song as all the songs on there are have a funky aesthetic compared to the first one. Then the third one is the introduction of like, yeah, really regimented tempo control. You have accelerandos and stuff, but you don't have like, here's the new tempo right away. So on the newer stuff, I think Jack and I subconsciously and consciously kind of like we wanted to include all those ideas from the past and maybe some things, some new type of things. So yeah, I think when I think about it, we have parts that change on a dime. We have parts that, as far as tempo, and we have parts where there are little hiccups of tempo where something's not equal to a whole number anymore. And then we have parts that are very groovy and 16th note oriented. We try to do it all, something for everybody.
And I'm curious as well. This is from an interview. I forget exactly where it's from. I think it was from 2017, and it was just credited as being Yowie. So I don't know for sure who was actually answering these questions, but it may well have been you, Shawn.
Yeah.
And there was an interesting comment where you referred to Yowie as starting out as protest music, and I thought, what were you protesting against? And is there still an aspect of protest to what you're doing?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it is. So at the beginning, um, I would say Yowie was probably better categorized as performance art than a band. I think that's fair to say. So we essentially it was Jeremiah and me listening to music and sort of lamenting how formulaic a lot of music had become. And whenever someone was like, "Hey, check out this band," it was like it always seemed very sort of like predictable, and genre rules were being employed, and like at the time, a lot of times we were like, I just don't like that. It just is not grabbing me. It's just not very interesting. And so we just sat down one night and wrote out what are the rules, what are the conventions, the mores of these compositions that we are finding to be distasteful and not very creative, and like try to like deduce what they are from like listening to these things. And we just wrote out a bunch of like rock rules that everyone seemed to be following. And then we just essentially performed an experiment, literally, where we were saying, okay, let's try to write music that does not follow any one of these rules. We like intentionally, those are forbidden. And then that'll be the list of thou shalt nots. And then we'll try to see what is possible outside of that, of those constrictions, right? And so we just started playing around with every aspect of it, meter, the notes chosen, the number of measures, everything that we could think of that seems to be like a sort of rigid social convention in songwriting. We just said, what is it going to be like if we absolutely do not follow any one of those? And so that's what we were for the first few years of like assembling things together. I think at one point somebody somebody told us that we were playing anti-music at them. I was like, yeah, I mean, kind of. Yeah. We are going to do the opposite of music at you, or at least the opposite of conventional music at you, and see if we can kind of expand what the possibilities are, and try to liberate ourselves from any sort of like conditioning that we've had as to what a good song is, or a good note is, or a good meter is, or whatever. Can we just try to set aside all of the social programming about that and have a more sort of like creative process?
And so getting to the sort of historical part of where the three of you got together. So obviously there was a fairly large gap between the last album and Taking Umbrage. And of course, any conversation that is going to involve like 2020 or 2021, there's the black hole of COVID that fits into the story somehow. But tell me a bit about the story of how the last iteration of Yowie disintegrated and the new iteration of Yowie came together.
So at So I guess at the end of it, we released Synchromysticism, and Jeremiah had a lot of other kind of priorities in his life, and so Chris and I ended up writing a good chunk of his parts, or at least the ideas for his parts. And he was still committed to completing the album, but he was like ready for a transition in life, which is pretty understandable. And Chris is more of a writing with Yowie, with it being extremely structured, is just not his general style. Like he adapted to it, but he is much more at home, kind of improvisational. And so we knew kind of all along this was going to be Jeremiah's last album. And as we kind of moved on, it's like, okay, well, Jeremiah's gone, and are we going to start trying to recruit for a new one here? And Chris more and more thought about it and said, I think I kind of want to write music that's a little more free and less structured, or at least doesn't follow the kind of process that Yowie has, which is very understandable. And so I'm trying to remember, Daniel, but I think you had contacted me about a cleric show is where it first started. Is
Matt
that right?
Hallenberg.
Yeah.
Credit
Oh,
to Matt
Matt did.
Hallenberg, my buddy.
Yeah.
Hello, Matt, if you're watching. And he put me in Yowie, literally. And he also was the one that got Cleric, got the attention of John Zorn and Trace Bruins for the band Cleric that he started with Larry Kordowitz and Nick Schellenberger long before I joined that band. But one of the nicest things anyone's ever done for me was to literally put me in Yowie because he was trying to build connections, I guess, for our tour, for our DIY tour, which we did play St. Louis, and we did stay at Shawn's lovely home, which is a mecca for touring musicians across this great nation. And there was no Yowie to play with, though, sadly. So Matt, man of a thousand bands, just said, "Well, me and Daniel can do it," because he knew that I was a fan. I'd gotten him into Yowie, and we spent some tours just listening to a lot of Yowie on the road. And so he said yes. Then later he decided, oh, this is really hard. It's going to take about as much time as all my other bands put together. So he dropped out kind of early on, and then we were stuck looking for a third person for a while. Then yeah, COVID was a problem, but I guess at that point it didn't slow us down very much because it slowed us down in our each of our personal lives more than it did us as a band because we still could work. And we'll always be able to work as long as there's an internet around, hopefully.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a funny thing. Like, I have tried out a lot of people in this band, and it's funny because like excellent musicians. It's not like they can't do it or something like that. They're not able to meet the cut or whatever. Generally speaking, the barrier for somebody who says like, oh, I really like your music, maybe we can play together, is I send them like I tell them pick a song. What's a song you want to work on? And then I send them isolated tracks. And then like some kind of version of the structure, which by the way, for me is written in my own kind of devised way of describing rhythm, essentially. And then most of the time they go like, "Oh, wait, that's what this is? Are you serious? That's how the song goes?" And then they go like, "Ah, okay, sorry, I did not realize it." I'm like, "Well, but you've been listening to it all these years." It's a very different thing to play it versus listening to it. Yeah.
So I remembered just now when I first contacted you, I included a transcription with it because I wanted this guy to know that I would put some work in into understanding. So I picked a part from, I think it was a Absurdly Ineffective Barricade.
That's right.
And I tried to pick a part that would be difficult because I know, and that's something we have in our new stuff too. There's always one or two parts that are just these tight knots, craziness. And and that was one of them. The part you might know the part I mean if you know the song. And so
Yes,
I wrote it down, and I might have sent a recording of me playing it. I don't remember. And then we
you
just had
did.
to start learning the songs to make sure I could really do it and to make sure I liked doing it. That I can understand how people might not, they might hear it and think it's easier than it really is until some of those details start to hit you over the head, trying it 10 times and not getting it. So,
Yes, it's always an awkward. And by the way, yeah, I was like, holy crap, this guy's not going on the pile with the other people who are going to say like, oh wait, I didn't realize what I was getting myself into or whatever. Like this guy is going to be able to really do this and is interested. And I mean, I think a lot of it is like, how willing are you to spend the sometimes sort of like unreasonable amount of time and energy to like get the structure down and then practice and practice executing something. And usually it's because it is counterintuitive. There's like a lot of stuff that's just counterintuitive, kind of like tongue twisters in your mind a lot of times. And you have to like do a lot of mental processing to play through it. So like that was like very impressive. I said, all right, we're off to the races. I got one. Yeah.
So when the three of you, the two of you and Jack, started playing together, if I'm not wrong, the first recordings that you actually had together ended up on the split with Pilly Coit, who I've also interviewed as well. Oh, lovely, totally lovely guys. So how did that come about, that process of you doing that split with them?
Those are all just live recordings of tracks from the new album, right? So when we all got together and recorded the album, we said we got to play at least a few shows. We can't like just record an album and then go home. So we set up a series of 3 shows, each one of which was really fantastic in its own way. And there were some recordings going on. I think the biggest and most important one is at the Firehouse in Worcester. And that was like a big part of the excitement about that is they said, please come to Worcester. And we're like, Worcester's a far drive. And, and they said, but we're going to record it and it's going to be like a whole thing. And we'll even bake you a cake if you come. And, which is an American kind of like colloquialism, just meant to be like, we'll roll out the red carpet. We'd love to see it, right? And so they did set it all up. They had videos. They had a really, really good recording setup for live recording stuff. And then they literally baked us a cake, and it was beautiful. It had glitter. It was multi-layer cake. But like we're still so several in coming weeks. We're gonna release some more live footage from that show in particular, as well as some videos that are synced to the album audio that incorporate footage from each of those 3 shows.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And on that topic of live shows, so I understand that you have some. In fact, you're going to be coming to the UK relatively soon. So what have you got in terms of shows lined up?
Well, we're going to be playing for just under 3 weeks on the Great Continent. And in London, we're going to be playing at a place called the Strong Room. And we're going to be playing with a couple of bands that are newer to me, but I'm really kind of liking what I'm hearing. And in fact, I just learned who the other bands were yesterday. So we're like kind of excited about that. So it's going to be a pretty amazing show. So one of them is called the Y Patterns. I don't know if you know them. And another one is called Scared Little Toaster. And both of those names, I was like, those are both intriguing names.
Definitely. I don't know Scared Little Toaster, but I have to hear what Scared Little Toaster sound like.
Exactly. That's like, that immediately drew you in, like, show me what this is.
That's a play on Brave Little Toaster, I assume, the movie, the animated film, The Brave Little Toaster, if you don't know it.
I don't know it.
But if they know about it and they've named their band after it, I like them already.
There you go. There you go. So we're going to play 18 shows. We just calculated we will be traversing 4,000 miles. Our routing looks like kind of hilarious. It's like we wanted to avoid the center of Germany, in particular, I think Frankfurt, at all costs. And so we're just going all the way around, backtracking and going all the way around. So we're going to start in Belgium. We're going to run down to France, do the one UK show. Then we're going to go to Paris. Then we have just a very brief stint from Paris to Copenhagen. Just quick jaunt from Paris to Copenhagen. Then we'll kind of wrap around there, do some Germany, Poland, Czech Republic, Geneva, And then we'll be coming back to like France and Belgium for the last few shows, including our last show will be Sonic City Festival in a town in Belgium that I will not pronounce correctly if I try. It's something like Kotrajik.
As a silent J.
Sorry, Belgian people. I'm sorry.
My podcast is filled with me mispronouncing places and names. Well, in that case, I think, unless I've forgotten anything else, yeah, the album's out on the 3rd of October. There are some great editions that are available. I forget exactly, but you've got some nice vinyl editions. I think there's some sort of special, yeah, you've got a bundle with blue vinyl and CD, which is very cool. I am definitely a supporter of the value of physical media and people not just having digital files or even just, streaming music. So I think it's very cool. What about the artwork as well? I guess we haven't really talked about the artwork of the forthcoming album.
Okay, so yeah, the another benefit of being members of the SKiN GRAFT community. It's oddly, it's Mark Fisher's brother-in-law is how we met him. His name is Arnulf Rodler, and he's a musician as well as an artist. And Mark had approached us because we weren't really sure what we were going to do for the third album, and he said, like starting off the pitch, like, hey, this is my brother-in-law's art, is okay, like it sounded like it was casual. I was like, well, okay. I mean, and then he showed it to me and I said, oh, this is like stunning and fabulous. And the thing that I thought to myself, like, the first couple albums, I was like, I don't know what kind of art goes with this music really. When I saw his artwork, I was like, this is perfect, right? Because his art essentially consists of extremely detailed, like I hesitate to use the word, but almost like obsessive numbers of single, very thin lines that are like just perfectly configured. So he did the artwork for the last album and this album, and could not possibly be happier with it. It turned out that I do care about album art, which I didn't know until I saw great album art, and I said, like, that is like, that really means something to me, that's associated with the music. It's not a formality that we have to have something on the cover. It's like really well thought out and great art.
Yeah, no, it really, really is cool. And I like as well, yeah, the continuity between the last album and this one, the way with the text as well. I really like the way that Yowie is spelt out. It looks really neat. Everything about it, like the design, the colors, the text, it all fits together very well.
He created his own font for Yowie. Like it's its own kind of like rune language font, which is like amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very fitting. Well, Shawn, Daniel, thank you so much for your time. It was great to chat with you and get your insights. And
October 24th at the Strong Room in London.
October 24th at the Strong Room in London. I have no excuses, and I guess I'll see you there.
Awesome.
A short jaunt down to London.
Exactly. Well, I was through there for Bunwell last week, so if I can come to London for Bunwell, I can come to London for Yowie.